Good afternoon. You are tuned into Ability Matters, a program that covers matters to do with abilities, disabilities and everything in between. Ability Matters is one of the longest running disability-related programs in the whole wide world. Starting as Headway on air in 2007, you can now listen to podcasts of previous Ability Matters programs on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for Ability Matters. Ability Matters is brought to you by My Home Living Care, an NDIS registered disability.
Thank you very much, Sean. Give you a quick rundown of today's show. We've got my choice of various songs thrown in there in between a little pre-recorded interview with Simone for the moment now, because it's just me in the studio at the moment because I don't have Beck, my usual co-host, hasn't come in. She's doing her own thing, but I'm trying to hold the ship here. I'm going to start off today's show with Nick Kershaw, Wouldn't It Be Good, from 1984 album Human Racing. And after that, we'll get straight into the interview, shall we? Wouldn't it be good? Yeah. Yes, wouldn't it be good without a care? And now let's just jump in straight into the interview with Simone, and I think, I'm not quite sure who actually conducted the interview, but let's find out, shall we? I'll update it as we go along next time.
Good afternoon and welcome to Ability Matters. My name is Sean, and today I'm interviewing Simone, who works up in the Gosford and Central Coast area for a fantastic organisation called Plan Tacker. We did last speak to Simone, or I spoke to Simone in July 2024, so we caught up with her a few days ago to have a chat about some of the things that have happened since then. Welcome to the program, Simone.
Thank you so much, Sean, for having me on and sharing a little bit about what Plan Tacker does for the community.
Not a problem. It's good to have you back on.
Yeah.
So we spoke almost 2 years ago, just a little bit under. I know you got a couple of kids. What's been happening with them? Anything exciting, or yourself? You've done anything exciting the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, some more new and some more wrinkles, and my kids growing into teenagers, which is very lovely. My daughter
I'm
now
guessing there might be a bit of a direct correlation between teenager and wrinkles. I think that's...
and great hair. But yeah, just a little bit older, playing netball now everywhere and soccer. So that's, the things you do as a parent. So if I'm not running around for Plan Tacker, you see me on a sideline somewhere watching sports.
How do you manage that? Because I know I was really lucky. I've got two boys and they're twins and they're in the same team. So that was very easy. How do you manage, do you ever have clashing timetables with the netball and the soccer or other activities?
Oh, well, same as in the world that we're living in the NDIS, it takes the community to raise kids, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of sharing around. If I can, I take a couple of kids, and if someone else can, then, just trying to manage it that way.
Yep. Major logistics action. Having twins is very easy, especially in the same team. I felt like I was cheating a little bit when I talked to everyone else. You got a couple of kids. Yeah, what about yourself? Have you done, any exciting courses or been overseas or done any travel, anything exciting like that?
No, actually, I've just been working a lot, to be honest, because there was lots of changes in the NDIS sector. But I did travel one time with the kids to the Hunter Valley and one time with the husband. So, but that was about it, really. Yeah. But I'm planning a trip to Germany at the end of this year, hopefully.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we've been dealing with lots of NDIS changes. As you probably are aware, a lot has happened and a lot has happened and impacted plan management. So that kept us really on our toes this year, or since we spoke last.
Before we get into the changes, can you just give us a bit of a rundown? What is plan management?
Plan management, there's really three options when it comes to managing your plan. And
so the NDIS funding in people's plan you're talking about there?
Yes. So the three options are really that you can be agency managed, self-managed, or plan managed.
Okay.
And if you can choose one of them, and if you should choose agency managed, the NDIS manages the funding in your plan. And
so the government department, the NDIS manages the funding?
Yes. They manage the funding, and you can only use providers who are registered with the NDIS. So you're a little bit restricted in the providers that you can use.
I'll just jump in quickly there because the organisation I work for, My Home Living Care, we're NDIS registered, and there's a significant amount of paperwork and auditing and policies and quite a arduous process that you go through to be registered. And that generally is because the clients that we work with and people that are agency managed are at the more complex end of the spectrum. So there's a lot more direct oversight by the government department, the NDIS.
That is correct. And there seems to be a tendency for more and more providers to be registered, to be honest. And I think also the compliance part can be good to have done.
Yeah, I think there's a real interest from the NDIS to move towards having more and more people registered, more and more organisations registered. It seems to be a bit of a general push.
Yes, we can see that, but it hasn't been legislated yet. So therefore, and it still provides the opportunity for participants to really choose their provider, because some smaller providers might not be able to pay for the registration. So
yes,
some independence. So therefore, it gives that participant still the choice.
Yeah, because there's a lot of sort of small operations, maybe a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist that works by themselves, or even I know there's support workers that are, maybe they're football players or they're guitar players or some interests like that, and so they base their business on that skill or experience or thing that they can do, and it's not worth their while to go through that registration process, but people still want to work with them or have support from them because they can do the guitars or the music or whatever it is.
Yes. So there's the agency-managed component, and then there's a self-managed component. So if you're brave enough to nominate yourself or someone else to take full control of managing your NDIS funding and payments, and then you can choose any provider as long as they have an ABN. Still requires to be fully compliant, right? So, and you have to do all the administration yourself. This is the second option.
Yeah. Did you know much about that? Is that from what I've heard? I don't know a lot about it. From what I've heard, that there's a lot of admin. So let's say mum or dad do that. They do the self-managed. There's basically you're running a business and a business that the NDIS oversees. So there's a whole lot of invoicing and explanations and notes and things, and you go through audits. That's quite a big thing to do.
Yeah, I see what has changed from last year to this year is that I actually also got some facts for you ready to go. Because we took the December 2025 quarter report, and in that report, a minority of participants, which is 6%, had their funding managed entirely by the NDIA. So it just really shows agency managed is only 6%.
Wow.
While the majority is 68% to prefer to engage a plan manager.
Okay.
And then the remaining 26% of participants choose to self-manage all or part of their funding. Okay. So it is still 26% that are still managing their own plan. So it is still a significant amount of proportion, but the majority with 68% really prefer to engage a plan manager. And and with a plan manager, you can still choose the support as long as the person or the business has an ABN. And so you still have that freedom and that choice. And then we make sure that all those payments go through and keep within the plan.
So it would be accurate to say...
we simplify the work around the NDIS without having to deal with the complexities. So we look at compliance, the invoices. You can track your funding on our portal that we have. So that just makes it easier. You don't have to worry about any paperwork at all.
So like your own personal NDIS accountant, so to speak, but a little bit more than that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the thing that's changed too that I'm aware of, and maybe we can talk about that now, is that especially in the last 6 to 12 months, the NDIS have really, in some ways, cracked down and got a lot more kind of work and paperwork and a lot more detail wanting from plan managers. Can you talk a little bit about some of the changes in the last 6 to 12 months for plan management organisations?
Yeah, so shortly after we spoke, there was the amendments in October 2024. That was a big, big change, Sean, as you probably know, and it was very impacting for us plan manager. And the biggest change was the ins and outs list, because it just really changed in what we could pay and what we couldn't pay. But then they also introduced funding periods. And funding periods, again, they really changed the way how we work as plan manager. Funding periods means like someone can now have a plan from 1 to 5 years, and the funding can be split in periods. But each period in those components can vary. They don't have to be the same. And they can be 1 month, they can be 3 months, they can be 12 months. It can be anything really. And that's what gets decided when the plan is created. And then
so essentially it's like a cake that's cut up into, say, if it's a monthly planned period, cut up into 12 pieces, that you can only have one piece of cake a month.
Yes. And so you can't overspend in your first period at all. And then once the funding runs out, it's run out. But if you don't spend it, it does carry over into your next period. At least you're not losing your funding. It just gets really carried forward. But that meant a lot of change and education in our community, because it's just a very culturally different way of how to process invoices and funding, and how to look at funding also for support coordinators and providers. It really have to make sure that the invoices goes in as soon as you can, because you just don't know if the funding period might be finished, and you have to, you want to make sure you invoice at the time you provided the services as soon as you can. Yeah.
And I know there was an increasing problem before this of organisations that probably weren't the best.
Yes, there you go. Now, what Sean was just hinting at just then, organisations who were spending people's funding from the NDIS, that sort of thing. Now, I just come across a friend of mine who actually had that same sort of issue come up, and that's just not exactly the right way to do things. As you know, may or may not have heard, you watch the TV, obviously you may do. If you hear the advertisements for shows like A Current Affair, that sort of thing, there always seems to be someone out there ripping off the NDIS system. It's out there just to help people who are in a situation similar to myself, who they can't look after themselves financially due to their inabilities, let's say. Disabilities, that's right, yes. And that's just not right to rip them off like that. No. But yes, okay, I'm going to throw into another tune now. It's currently 80 minutes past 12 p.m. I'm going to play for you now a bit of an Aussie crawl, actually with James Rain, of course, and one of the Australian band Aussie crawl, yeah. James Rain singing the song Errol from 1981 album Sirocco. It's actually a lyrical accolade to the well-known actor Errol Flynn. Yeah, great. As I was saying before, that was just Errol by Aussie Crawl singer James Rain. Errol Aussie Crawl with singer James Rain singing Errol from 1981 album Sirocco. Great accolade to the Errol Flynn. Lovely. Okay, now let's just jump straight back into the interview we just started with Simone. Sean was conducting an interview with Simone.
My organisation does a lot of accommodation. That's pretty standard. But I do know someone like, behaviour support or occupational therapist. Often the funding will be a bit more front-loaded, so there's a bit more funding available earlier, because that's often when people do assessments and things like that. And then after that, they do the interventions or the therapy or the whatever you call it. So it's not like it's just funding's cut up into 12 equal parts if it's a yearly thing. There are different recognition of different kind of funding needs of different services. So it is a little bit more, I guess, restricted, but also has that flexibility built in.
Yes, absolutely. A particular support coordination, I see more and more that it is front-loaded, so that the support coordinator can do the initial work that is required. And as you already said, all the assessments, and that this is catered for. So it is really important to have a good conversation with your planner at the plan creation, and making sure that it really caters exactly to your needs and how you need your plan to be structured.
Yeah,
but we're definitely seeing a lot more front-loaded. And this is actually really good, Sean, that you brought this up, because it also means for providers to really ensure that if they can, to understand the plan periods of their clients and entering them in their service agreements. And that's also really great for participants to know that then they can share some information if they want to with their providers. Then the providers can allocate that certain funding, and that can certainly be done with Plan Tacker, and that's just to safeguard that certain funding is for that particular provider in that period, and then the next amount of funding in the next period for that certain provider. It's just a way to safeguard and understanding how to utilise your plan. I know it sounds really complicated, but it's actually not. And I do see that funding periods can be also a safeguard for participants, and ensuring that everything goes according to plan from the beginning. And
when I said before, some organisations sort of overspent. Sometimes it was down to the the participant themselves getting a bit excited and going, I've got all this money, and setting up too many services and then running out towards it. So, there's a lot of benefits there for the people involved. Just before you mentioned in and out, what's that all about? You said the in and out list.
Yes, there was some categories that were just not funded anymore. So sports was one of those particularly that was just not funded anymore. So it was a lot of things that the NDIS decided that they will not be funding, and that meant a huge change for our community. And
I know that change came about because the NDIS went, look, there's a whole lot of stuff that mainstream people do, and, mainstream things that people get, like air conditioners or, sporting equipment, that's not really related to someone's disability. I mean, whether someone's got autism or intellectual disability or whatever doesn't mean they get free football boots or things like that. So I know that's pretty straightforward, but as always, there's a bit of a grey area, and I know there were some people, I've heard of a story of a lady with multiple sclerosis. One of the issues with that is you can't control your body temperature, and she had air conditioning paid for by the NDIS in the past, but now it's not paid for because that's a off-the-shelf, it's not a disability-specific implement or piece of equipment. Air conditioning is something that everyone needs, really. I mean, I don't know what it's up there in the cost, but I'm sure it's down here, 32 degrees and 98% humidity. Air conditioning is very essential for a lot of people, so it's not really specifically related to the disability.
Yes, it has to be, and it must be reasonable and necessary and related to the disability and not for day-to-day living. So, but if you ever have any questions regarding the ins and out list and really digging down and understanding, you can always ring our team and they will be able to help you out with any of that. But those changes have been in place now for a while, and I do believe that our community, we managed through that quite well, I would say.
And I do know too, one of the changes or the change that come with that changes is that plan managers are now very more active in looking at things and supporting clients to make good choices about what their funding can be spent on, not be spent on. And the issue with that is that someone might go out and get an air conditioner and then find that they don't get reimbursed for it, or some bit of equipment. So I do know plan managers are very much proactive these days and very supportive and very available to the clients, to the participants, to ask questions and say, can I do this or not do this? Because you don't want that to find out after the fact that there's a problem. You want to make sure you can talk to someone that knows what they're doing, like a plan manager.
Yeah, I can always recommend to call us, our team. They're always happy to answer any questions. But I can also recommend to put things in writing, because we will definitely ask a lot of confirmation from the NDIA directly, and making sure that it's dated or approved. And the same is for the participant. I think the way forward will be, making sure that it's in black and white and in writing in order to move forward. Yeah, I can really recommend that. Yes, I can really recommend that. Check your plan very carefully, read it. If there's something missing, go back, ask if you can get that added. It's really important.
As well as a plan manager, I think support coordinators are very important in that process as well, and having a good support coordinator that knows what they're doing and is aware of these things is very important.
Well, it reinstates you need to have the right team around you in order to manage everything, because it can be very overwhelming, and we are certainly keen for participants to really focus on themselves and their care so that their participants get what they need, and we deal with the rest. I think we always say that we are with you every step of the way, and that's what we're trying to do, being part of the team. And we've really come a long way also to, I think we're actually one of the leading plan managers that implemented the funding periods in our app. So we have an app so people can actually see their funding periods. They can see how they're tracking. We spend a big effort on education. Education is one of those things that I think that's really important for our community, particularly while we're seeing more and more changes coming. Because fundamentally, where can you educate yourself? Where can you get the best information? How can you find out what's right and wrong? So I think it's, the team is important and the education is important. So we're really trying to do more and more in that space. And we're actually just about to launch next week the Fast Tips with Plan Tacker.
Just before we get into that, I'll talk about that in a sec. I just wanted to say that, like, I see an accountant. I think a lot of my friends see accountants. I think most people do. It's not because that I couldn't understand how to do a tax return. The time it would take me to do it, it's just easier to pay someone, $100 or whatever it is to get it done. And I think it's the same with the Plan Tracker. It's not, I mean, it's not hugely complex. It's not, it's not rocket science. But if you're doing it every day, all day, then you get really good at it. And that's where I think, good plan trackers, good plan managers and good support coordinators, because they're just elbow deep in it all day, they get to learn what works and what doesn't work. So it's not like it's impossible or even, overly complex. It's just there's changes. I know there's changes coming in July this year with the way that plans are assessed and people's support needs are assessed. There's not a lot of detail out there at the moment. It seems sometimes in the NDIS you just finally get yourself sorted out and work out what's going on, and they change the goalposts a little bit, as they kind of improve things and move things along. And so, there's a whole lot of new level of learning to do. The other thing I want to say was with these changes, part of the benefits is, around fraud. Do you have any idea of and maybe not fraud so much as just incorrect payments or overclaim payments? Have you got any statistics around that, how much money might have been saved through some of these sort of processes?
Yeah, we stopped over $60 million of fraudulent invoices from being processed. So that's a significant number.
Over what, the last 12 months or 2 years? Or
yes, over the last 12 months, yeah.
Wow. How many, I don't know if this one, but how many millions of dollars or whatever would you manage, the organisation sort of plan manage?
So unfortunately, I don't have that number here.
So would 60 million be like a significant chunk?
Yes, it would be a significant chunk out of the transactions that we do. Unfortunately, I wish I had that number for you, but I just don't have it handy with me now.
Yeah, and it's probably a bit of a commercially kind of sensitive thing as well. It's probably a little bit too much. But the point is 60 million is not, it's not just a little bit of loose change down behind the couch kind of amount. It's a very important amount.
Yes, and it also shows that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done in the sector, because we really want to make sure that the participants are safeguarded and that it doesn't even get to the fraudulent invoice. That would be the ideal scenario. To your magic wand point of view, this is the magic wand that I had, that no participant ever end up in a situation that's undesirable. And I think it's really important that we work with the government together on those changes, and that as providers or as a participant, that if you find yourself in a situation that you do talk to somebody, and our team is always there.
And I'm sorry, I got a little bit misdirected earlier. Yes, it was Simone who's the spokesperson for the group Plan Tacker. Play a quick little tune before we get back into the interview. I've got Johnny Rivers with Secret Agent Man from 1966. However, I remember it specifically from the 1995 film Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Great little happy tune there. Secret Agent Man by Johnny Rivers from the 1966 album The Secret Agent Man. Aptly put there, self-titled and all that kind of thing. But now let's just jump back straight into the three-part interview we had between Sean and Simone from Plan Tacker. Lovely little NDIS funding monitoring app that I myself is going to get involved with later this afternoon. Play for you now the interview and the final part of the interview, and then we'll get into whatever music, whatever we have left. So here we go.
But I just want to go back. You said on the app there's a little feature coming in. You're just talking about that. I cut you off a little bit before.
Yes. So first of all, we've got some NDIS tools available, and I can highly recommend to have a look at the NDIS number cruncher. It just really helps to calculate the supports, particularly when it comes to funding periods. You can say you want to calculate your supports over a period of 12 weeks, and it gives you the number, and then you can keep adding different supports. It just helps you with budgeting and seeing what you can do with the funding. And then secondly, we are launching Fast Tips, NDIS Fast Tips with Plan Tacker next week, and we're just trying to do short education within a couple of minutes on the social media so that people can just have a look at the quick update or at the quick learning. And we also would love to hear feedback regarding that. It's going to be on Facebook. So if anyone wants to check it out next week and also give feedback what they think about it, including if there's anything that the community likes to hear more about it, we are more than happy to hear it. We would love to know, and then we will see what we can do.
Okay, because I just did a quick calculation. Some people get multiple hours a week, and if someone's living in supported accommodation, that can be, 140 hours a week. And just so people understand out there, if you're 1 hour out a week, that can make a difference of around $3,500 a year. So if you're out by 5 hours, times that by 5, the figures can add up pretty quickly. So having an accurate way of budgeting and predicting and working out how much you've got, often people get a lump sum amount and they'll have to work out how many hours they do a week. And if that's not accurate, if it's under, you're not getting enough support. If it's over, then you're blowing out the budget and possibly not running out of money too early. All right, so let's talk about how people can talk to you or find out a little bit more about, Plan Tacker. What's the best ways for people to find out what's going on?
Yeah, I always recommend checking out our socials because there's a lot happening in the community. We're very community focused. We're just sponsoring a local soccer club as well for participants and young adults and children to play soccer in an all-inclusive team.
Oh, wow.
And so therefore it will have a reduced registration fee because, Sean, I know you very much love your sports as well with your kids.
Yes.
You know how expensive those sign-up fees are. And we also understand that sometimes it cannot be easy. And sometimes you just go, well, do I really want to spend $400 for something that I don't know if my child or my young adult will really enjoy this? Maybe you don't have that amount of money. So we really wanted to make sure that it's becoming more accessible for people just to give it a go. It's good Aussie, you say everyone needs to be able to give it a go. And so that was our goal. And, these registration fees will be reduced. So Kincumber Roos, if somebody wants to check it out, their season's starting in April.
The Kincumber Roos, like kangaroos, the Kincumber Roos?
Is it? That's it. That's
cool.
it.
And just one of the things too that people not be aware of, or maybe they are, that it just tends to be that people that have people with disability in their family, often kids, unfortunately there's often lower levels of income because, kids kind of support needs and running people around to therapists and doing a lot of stuff really bites into the time and people had to take time off and all sorts of things. So, I think it's really important what you're doing there with that sponsorship, helping families that are often financially strained. Sometimes it might be not even affordable for families, so helping them out to get out and do those things that are very good for the people to be involved in. I think it's good. And that's how we met. I was involved with a disability-specific or an inclusive disco up on the Central Coast. And, Plan Tacker came in and provided some sponsorship, which means we could give out some prizes and do nice decorations and have a really good time for people to come along and enjoy. Plan Tacker are very community-minded, which, is one of the things I really like about Plan Tacker.
Yeah, and see, we enjoyed that part, and this is where the values really align. And, it's great to be amongst providers with similar values and being able to give back something that really matters to our community. I should have told you this earlier. We also, at the end of last year, we were part of a food pantry up in Charm Haven, further north at the coast. And as we know that there's a food and housing crisis in many areas of New South Wales. So we really wanted to see how we could help and what we could do. So we opened up this pantry with a couple of providers. And, that was a huge success as well. So the community can go and, collect food as they wish. And also,
is it one of those places where you pay $30 or $40 and you get a big bag or a couple of bags of groceries and things?
Free.
Free?
Wow.
Free.
Yeah, so you can look it up on Instagram. It's the Kindness Pantry.
The Kindness Pantry.
The Kindness Pantry, yeah.
Okay.
You will find it. And so if you need some food, you're always welcome to go and visit the Kindness Pantry. And on the other hand, if you, you can donate or you can give what you can or take what you need.
And so what's the phone number and the website and all those sorts of details of how people can contact you?
Our phone number is 1-800 549 670.
Okay, and the website?
www.plantacker.com.au.
Okay. And in terms of Facebook, if you just put Plan Tacker Facebook in, that'll pop up, I imagine?
Yes.
What areas does Plan Tacker cover? I know you look after the Central Coast sort of area. What areas does Plan Tacker as an organisation look after?
We are all over Australia, really. It's just me that I look after New South Wales, but Australia...
you look after New South Wales. I thought it was just the Central Coast, but it's all over New South Wales. Okay.
Yeah, I look after New South Wales, predominantly the Central Coast. That's sort of where Plan Tacker was born and started, and this is where we have the majority of our participants, but we certainly are in other states, and we are growing.
And Wollongong too, that sounds like?
Yes. My focus is very at the Central Coast, but I look after whole New South Wales. I'm trying to spread my love.
And the nature of Plan Tacker is it's not a face-to-face thing. Like with the apps and the way that things work, there's a lot of online stuff, and all the interactions with the NDIS are all online. And as you said before, especially getting emails and getting things in writing is important.
Yes.
So it's sort of something that you could work with anyone anywhere. It's not a physically based sort of thing.
Yes, and I certainly connect with a lot of providers and support coordinators online, because it's also a lot faster. We can do a lot of support online.
Cool.
But all the community work is predominantly done at the Central Coast.
Well, is there anything else? Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you think people would like to know?
No. Thank you, Sean, for having me on the chat and sharing a little bit about plan management and what it means and how we can support, and basically that we simplify the work around the NDIS.
Yes, the Plan Tacker app. Well, I'd never heard of it before, and I just got onto it now, and I've downloaded it myself, and I will sign up to it later this afternoon. The key points there were online is important for this kind of thing as well, but there are alternative measures as well. The phone number, as per usual, always available. Pen and paper handy. 1-800-549-670. And online, or another option, www.plantracker, all one word, .com.au.